Today, I'm breaking down how you guys can make better Dynasty fantasy football trades. And rather than tell you, I'm going to show you. I'm going to go over 6 of my own individual leagues, sending out trade offers, trying to improve my roster, and I'll walk you guys through kind of my thought process for why I get so many trades done. This should be a very fun video. Let's get right into it. All right, so the single best tools to get more trades done is our Flock, My Team's Analyzer, and Trade Calculator. I'm going to be showing both of those off because I legitimately use these tools every time I send out a trade offer because they are the best ones. So we're going to start with one of my contending rosters, El Chapo in Bush League Best Ball Dynasty. And again, shout out to any of you guys who are in these leagues because I might be sending you specifically some of these trades. But what we're going to do, and when you guys send out trades in total, we did an entire video on Dynasty Trade Secrets. Essentially, we want to identify our weaknesses, our strengths, what our goal is. This is a competitive team. My goal is obviously to win the championship, but I don't, necessarily want to sell the farm and sacrifice all my value that I've built up because I do have a very strong roster. I do have a very deep roster. And again, being that this is a best ball league, it is nice to have some of these Mooney and Bateman and Tillman types who can definitely enter my lineup. But when we evaluate my roster, you can see the quarterback is apparently my weakest point with Kyler, with Dak, with Bryce Young. My running backs, my wide receivers, very, very strong. My tight ends, especially given that it's best ball, Laporta, Ferguson, Freiermuth, and Fannin, you're going to feel pretty comfortable with those guys. But again, we do have some weaknesses here. So what I would say, if you guys submitted this team for Dynasty Decisions or whatever, is that my weakness is maybe that I'm lacking some real firepower, like other than Devon Achane, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins types. I don't have like a bunch of studs at every position. So given that this team is very strong, given that I have all my draft picks as well, we're going to try and make some consolidation moves. And what a consolidation move is basically is that you're trying to upgrade your starting lineup. You're trying to get better studs at the top of your roster as opposed to guys that you're going to be looking at as, depth or whatever. So we're going to start by looking at some of the teams around this league and seeing if we can go after some of their best assets and use some of our depth, use some of our draft capital to go and get them. So I'm going to go down to the very bottom. Ideally, you guys want to be probably trading with teams that are near the bottom of the My Team's Analyzer because they're going to probably be more motivated to make trades. And also, if they have a top asset and you have depth, you can usually sell them on the fact that they don't have a very deep team. So I'm looking at Gimme Moore's team here. I like Chase Brown on this roster. So what I'm going to try and do is try and get Chase Brown off of him and even potentially inquire about some of his other assets because I could definitely use a Derrick Henry type. I could definitely use some of his other guys, some of these like Cortland Sutton and Debo's and Calvin Ridley's. But Chase Brown is the guy that I'm mainly interested in because he's younger still and he has some high-end production. So looking at his roster, again, we're going to evaluate our league mates roster after we evaluate our own. He doesn't really have a great wide receiver core. So he might be interested in some of the plethora of wide receivers that I definitely have. So what I think I'm going to use as a starting point here for this trade negotiation is DK Metcalf because DK Metcalf gets him a little bit younger at wide receiver because he's a little bit older there. And DK Metcalf is my 5th wide receiver. I feel like I can make up aggregate production, especially in best ball with Mooney, with Bateman, with Tillman, with the fact that I have a pretty good running back core to fill out my flex. So what I'm going to do is head on over to our trade calculator and I could show you guys exactly how it works here. You can put in, I receive Chase Brown. That's the guy that I want to go after. And then DK Metcalf is going to be the basis of the deal. Now, obviously, DK for Chase Brown straight up, not necessarily a fair offer. So what I would say is if you think, okay, I'm going to send him this offer, hope that he accepts it because I prefer Chase Brown over DK Metcalf, I would be willing to go as high as DK Metcalf in a mid to late projected, because my pick is probably not going to be early, 2026 second to try and get this deal done. So this is the deal I'm actually going to send him. I think a lot of people will send the basement offer that they want accepted right away. This is pretty close to the highest I would pay for Chase Brown. So this is the deal I'm going to be sending him right away so that he knows I mean business. So that was a good example of a deal that I might be potentially looking to do to try and get another running back who's going to give me kind of difference-making production. I talked about it in our trade targets by position that I think Devon Achane, who's on my team already, and Chase Brown, who I really like and have an affinity for in Dynasty, are good trade targets for those of you looking for difference-making, needle-moving production in your contending rosters. Now, again, ideally, you'd be trading with guys down here because they're probably more likely to make deals with you. They're probably more motivated to make trades. So let's keep looking at some of these top or lower end teams and see if we can find some players here. Now, this Keep Pounding guy, probably a Carolina Panthers fan. I have Chuba Hubbard. Let's keep that in the back of our mind. You want to be thinking of this stuff. Jordan Love, is a guy that would upgrade my quarterback core. If I could somehow upgrade from Dak Prescott, who's my QB2, or maybe even Bryce Young, because like I said, this guy's a Carolina Panthers fan, most likely, to Jordan Love, let's keep that in our back pocket. So let's head on over to the trade analyzer again and see if we can craft an offer. Looking at both of those quarterbacks, Dak Prescott, Bryce Young, let's see how we can get to Jordan Love and upgrade our quarterback spot. And who knows, maybe we even want to bring along Jayden Reed for the stack. I talked about him as a hard buy in our Dynasty trade targets by position. So we're on the trade calculator here. And again, just a quick shout out. These are free tools. You can use my specific rankings in the trade calculator if you're a paid subscriber, but you can just use the basic default expert rankings if you are not, and you'll get some good feedback that way as well. Not to mention the My Teams Analyzer as well. You can get my specific rankings if you use it, but you can just sign up for a free account on Flock Fantasy and just use your free trial, maybe cancel if you don't think it's worth it, and so on and so forth. But make sure to use promo code FSE. Anyways, we're going to use Bryce Young and Jordan Love as the basis of the deal. They're pretty far apart in terms of overall rankings for me, and I'm actually very high on Bryce Young, so 52 overall versus 36th overall. I have a number of different options here. Again, I can try and pivot a second-round pick plus Bryce Young into Jordan Love. This is the type of offer that I'd be comfortable sending out, especially considering looking at this guy's roster. He also could afford to get younger at the quarterback position or just at his team in general. And then also, because he's a Carolina Panthers fan, maybe I can probably get some other stuff. So let's see if I can send him to Carolina Panthers because he's probably a fan of the team, given that his name is Keep Pounding. And let's look at what I could get Jayden Reed and Jordan Love for Chuba Hubbard and Bryce Young. I have pretty adequate running back depth. I could probably afford to go out and get Jayden Reed and Jordan Love if I wanted to. But again, I already am very strong at wide receiver. You could kind of go back and forth on what trades we're going to make. I'm going to send out a feeler of that second round pick and Bryce Young for Jordan Love, and we'll see what he responds with back. Maybe he wants a running back because if you look at his team, he doesn't really have a whole lot of running back help there. You can see he just kind of has Aaron Jones and James Cook. Again, I could go even a step further and maybe go with Jordan Love and Jayden Reed and James Cook, and I give him Bryce Young, Chuba Hubbard, and a second round pick. So these are going to be offers that I'm all around with. Again, this is just one example, one league mate, one league, and I'm going to be going through a lot of leagues and sending out a lot of these trades. And if any of these trades get actually accepted, I'll throw this on the screen. I'm recording this about a day or two before I edit it on purpose so that I can edit in any of the trade negotiations on the screen while I'm talking. And also, if any of these deals get accepted, you guys will see some of the accepted deals there. So let's go through one more of my league mates here. And now this one is going to be an example of if I want to get real crazy, if I want to go after an absolute hammer and try and get one of the better assets in Dynasty because, you know, I have the affordability to do it. I still have my draft picks. I still have a lot of great assets. We're going to try and craft a deal around the Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown stack, because if you look at my team, you add Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown to this team, it's going to be an absolute monster. So let's try and work with Jay's plan here, who of course I know is a dedicated follower of the channel. There's a reason I'm recording this a couple days in advance because I don't want him to know my thought process behind these trades. But let's try and craft a deal around Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. And given what his team state looks like, maybe he's of the opinion that he doesn't have enough depth to win. Maybe he's of the opinion that maybe he needs to rebuild. I think one of those two things are probably true. He thinks he's either maybe a fraudulent contender because he doesn't have enough depth, or he maybe thinks I could handle a little bit more depth and then I could probably contend. If I turn Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown into a bunch of assets, that may help me going forward. And of course, I'm in the unique position that I have a bunch of great assets to offer him. So let's try and craft a deal around Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. Maybe I'm thinking if he thinks he can contend, he'd be interested in a Dak Prescott. He'd be interested in like a T. Higgins, maybe draft capital, maybe some of the other assets that I have. All right, so we're going to make the basis of the deal A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott and T. Higgins. Now, obviously pretty far distance away from each other. When you see it, it says I'm robbing him at the moment. I don't want to rob my league mates. I want to give them players that are going to help their team as well, because you don't want to be the guy that just tries to rip off every one of his league mates. So in his position, looking at his team one more time, he could definitely use, I think he's good at running back. He could definitely use a wide receiver back, which is why I'm giving him T. Higgins in this deal. Again, Dak Prescott, another quarterback to help make up for the loss of Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's probably looking for a fourth quarterback or a third quarterback to go along with Dak and Geno Smith. I unfortunately don't really want to give him Bryce Young in addition to this deal. But what I can do is give him some first round capital that if he wants to address his quarterback position, he can go ahead and do that. So we're going to go back to the trade calculator and we're going to offer him both my first and my second this year. And we'll see how close this gets him. Again, I see that it still says that I'm robbing him. I would be willing to give him 2 ones. I would be willing to give him my 2026 one and my 2027 one. I expect to still be a very strong contender at that point in time. So this would be about the amount that I'd be willing to give for the Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown stack. I think this essentially gives him a lot of great assets to work with. He can still maintain his competitive window. Dak Prescott, T. Higgins, competitive assets that'll give him good production. And he can use those 26 and 27 first round capital to go out and get a quarterback if he wants one, to go out and get another wide receiver if he wants one, to go out and get a tight end upgrade if he wants one. And he can kind of go ahead and do that. So I'm going to send out all these offers that I've kind of proposed so far. And I'll leave some time here at the end to see if any of these got accepted. If any of them got accepted, you'll see them on the screen right now. I'll show the trade negotiations. If none of them got accepted, I won't show that stuff and we'll just move on to one of my next teams. So let's move into team number 2 for me here. And this league is Flocked Up. This league, again, if you guys want to get my specific opinion using the My Teams feature, you can sort by my rankings. You can only do that if you are a subscriber to the site. And again, promo code FSE. All these features are free. The My Teams feature, the trade calculator are free, but you do get the best benefit if you are a site subscriber. You can see the league format and kind of the league dynamic right now. This was a startup last year. You can see there's a very clear top 4, top 5 teams in the league, including myself and Danny at number 2 and number 3 there. And then if you look at my roster, I'm definitely built more as a contender, as a true contender, where I have Bo Nix, Baker Mayfield, Tua Tagovailoa. That's a contending quarterback core. Running back wise, second in the league with Bijan, with Jacobs, with Kyron, with Pollard, all these guys. This league is not a best ball league. It is a managed format, half tight end premium, full PPR, super flex as usual. Wide receiver wise, you see London, you see Wilson, you see Higgins, Metcalf, Waddle, and Godwin. Very strong wide receiver core, especially given that this is a 3 wide receiver, 3 flex, I believe. And then you also have tight end, which is my biggest weakness right now. And that is the position that we're going to try and address using the trade strategy that I've documented for the last couple teams. So easy way to go about this is if you need a specific position. In my case, I need a tight end. You can scroll around to your league mates and you can see that number 5 beside the tight end. This guy has Tyler Warren as his top tight end. I could go after him. Again, I'm probably not going to want to trade with guys who have bad tight end cores. I want to be trading with players who have good tight end cores. So let's look around. He is Trey McBride. Don't really want to pay up for the tight end position. Philosophically, I like having not as good of tight ends. I just rather have better positions otherwise. This guy, this is Tom's team. I could go George Kittle potentially after him, but this guy's the number 1 tight end core in the league. Now, unfortunately, it's just being carried by Brock Bowers. Doesn't really have a whole lot of depth. Ideally, I'm looking for somebody who has multiple tight ends who I can go and trade for. Okay, this is the perfect team to go after. I mean, this dude has Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson, David Njoku, and Mark Andrews. Surely I can get a tight end off of this dude. And looking at his roster, I would say this is a team that's probably a fraud. It's probably stuck in limbo. There's not a whole lot going on in terms of direction, in my opinion. You have Christian McCaffrey, you have Chuba Hubbard, you have Cortland Sutton types, but then you also don't have enough adequate depth to be able to compete with a team like mine or some of the teams at the top. So if I were in this guy's position, I would be trying to sell off my competitive assets, sell off my excess tight end assets that I have. So I'm going to probably craft an offer around some young players to see if he can get younger, get a little bit better at wide receiver and running back specifically, maybe even quarterback if I want to go in that direction. So let's craft some offers around I would say of his tight ends, Laporta, Hawkinson, Njoku, and Andrews. Njoku is probably the one that I want to go after because Njoku is going to be cheaper than Hawkinson and Laporta, and he's also going to come and give me a good competitive tight end that I can build around for a fraction of what Sam Laporta or TJ Hawkinson is going to cost me. So let's build an offer around David Njoku. All right, so David Njoku is the main target here. You can see I have him ranked 117th overall. 117 overall is definitely, not an elite asset. We'll maybe even try and get a deal around TJ Hawkinson as well. I just want to craft one around Njoku because, I don't need to give up London. I don't need to give up Wilson, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle, even probably. Like if I put in Waddle's name, I think he's like far beyond. He's not that far beyond where I have David Njoku. So if I were to trade him, Jalen Waddle for David Njoku straight up, I would actually probably lose that trade. But who knows? He also has Cortland Sutton. Like I could get him to throw in Cortland Sutton. That would help give me a wide receiver back. This would definitely make some sense. Maybe I go Jalen Waddle and a second round pick. Mine is expected to be mid to late. I do still have my second, just to double check there. This could be the type of trade that I send him, where I get David Njoku and Courtland Sutton, so I'm not really losing any production. In fact, Courtland Sutton actually goes higher in redraft than Jalen Waddle goes. And given that this guy's team is probably not necessarily what I would call a true contender, maybe he's looking to get a little bit younger at wide receiver, offload a tight end because he has like 4 of them. And this is a trade that I'll absolutely be sending to him. And again, I'll throw it on the screen if it ends up getting accepted. Let's try and craft a deal around TJ Hawkinson instead, just because I do actually have some adequate depth to be able to go after TJ Hawkinson, whereas David Njoku is going to cost me a little bit more. So you can see that Jalen Waddle and TJ Hawkinson is a little bit closer of a discussion. I actually do have to update where I have Jalen Waddle ranked after the Jonnu Smith trade. So this might actually get it done. Maybe he'll do Waddle for Hawkinson straight up, given that he has Laporta, has Njoku, and has Andrews already. So maybe I'll just send him this as well. So I'll say, hey, which one do you want to move? TJ Hawkinson, David Njoku. These are the types of things I like to find out in the DMs with my league mates, talking on Sleeper. I'll send him an offer for Njoku. I'll send him an offer for Hawkinson, and I'll send him a message saying, hey, which one do you want to move? I actually am interested in both of them. I would prefer, whatever X, Y, and Z, and then he can decide at that point. So this is going to be my way of addressing my tight end position, because this guy is clearly the best guy to trade with because he has multiple tight ends. He should be motivated to move one of them. But other than that, this team is ready to compete. I mean, I have a great wide receiver core. I have a great running back core. My quarterbacks are definitely adequate enough to win. Tight end is really my only problem, and there's a reason that a lot of teams, like I looked around my entire league here, only that guy is the one to trade with at tight end, because everybody else just has one good tight end and then backups. And he's the only one with multiple starters. So I can go after any one of his guys. I could even go after Mark Andrews as well, depending on what the cost is. I just would prefer Njoku because I like the long-term output a little bit better. And I also would prefer Hawkinson as well. So we'll see what ends up materializing out of those trade discussions. Let's move on to team number 3. All right, so this is team number 3. And as you can see here, this is a very close league. And the reason for that is because we just had the startup. So this is not a league where I would be, competing versus a monster. I have a monster myself built up. This is a league that is pretty much wide open because the startup just happened. You can see the top team here is Arthur. He's just basically been collecting first-round picks and high-end assets. My team looks to be the top in terms of the rest of the league, and I still have basically all of my picks intact except for my next 2 years second rounders. And I've built out a pretty solid team here. You can see Jordan Addison, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, Jaden Reed, Courtland Sutton. This is also a best ball league, so my wide receiver core, while there's not an immediate stud here, there is definitely some good assets that can give me weeks in best ball, going all the way down really to like my wide receiver 8, wide receiver 9, Deebo Samuel, Cedric Tillman, and some of the guys below that. And then it is a half tight end premium. I do have Laporta and Njoku are going to hit my lineup. And then at running back, you see Achane, you see Kyron, and then some 0 RB guys behind him. Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes to carry my quarterback weeks, but I am missing a third quarterback. This was the league in which I traded Cam Ward away for a big package of Kyron Williams and George Pickens, and I believe I got some draft capital or David Njoku in that trade as well. So I ended up flattening out my quarterback strength, which was Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, and Cam Ward at one point, and I gave Cam Ward in a second for Kyron Williams, George Pickens, David Njoku to get a little bit more flattened exposure across the board at each position. So what I would say is my objective with this team, because I do have one of the better production teams in the league. Like I looked over all the teams that are contenders, and I would say just given underdog ADP and my quarterback strength, and I have a positional strength pretty much everywhere except for top end wide receiver, I could definitely compete and I could definitely win this year one. So what I can choose to do now is kind of make a decision on, am I going to really commit to this, try and win? Because it's not like my team is all in and I'm going to be useless next year. I do have some flexibility to be a multi-year contender. So that's kind of how I evaluated this team. So priority number one for me here is to get a alpha wide receiver 1, because right now, Addison, Metcalf, Pickens, Reed, Sutton, Pittman, Deebo, Tillman, great in best ball, great going to hit my lineups, but I would love a guy that I can rely on week in and week out. So let's go take a look at some of the bottom dwelling teams, see if we can find an alpha wide receiver 1 on some of them. You can see Rashee Rice is here. I'm not as big on Rashee Rice as some other people are, so I might avoid that one. Let's look at, we got Puka Nacua on this team. Definitely somebody that I could go after. Let's keep looking around here. Jamar Chase is on this team. He's going to definitely cost me a pretty penny, so I probably don't want to go after him. You can see Drake London is here. Okay, Drake London is a perfect price tag as far as like what I'm actually capable of acquiring on the open market. So let's take a look and see how much we can pay for Drake London here. Now, evaluating my league mates roster, it looks like he doesn't necessarily probably want to get rid of Drake London because I think he probably thinks he is a contending team as well. So we'll have to craft an offer that definitely suits him. But he doesn't have his first round pick, neither of the next 2 draft classes. So he really is committed to winning. And this will be hard to get Drake London from him, but let's see if we can maybe convince him a little bit that he's made a mistake by selling his first round capital. So let's craft an offer surrounding my first round pick and another receiver to help keep him competitive, but he recoups a first round pick in the process in exchange for Drake London. So this would be the initial offer that I'm probably looking at, where I'd be giving up my mid to late projected first round pick and Jordan Addison in exchange for Drake London. Now, again, you might be thinking, oh, he thinks he's competitive, he's not going to do that, but you never know. He might have some regret about selling his first round capital, and this might appeal to him thinking, okay, I still have good wide receivers, I still get Jordan Addison back, who's younger, or the same age basically as Drake London, going to give me some decent production in a best ball, and I pocket a first round pick. Maybe he would then choose to sell that first round pick for, Mike Evans or some kind of wide receiver that would give him some immediate production. So I'm going to send out this offer to him. Maybe it appeals to him. Maybe it doesn't. This could just be the starting point for our negotiations. But again, I think this is a very serious offer. You guys notice all the trade offers that I'm proposing are not like disrespectful. They're not like, maybe they're offers that I'm winning according to the trade calculator, but I'm not sending out offers that are complete ripoffs to my league mates where they're going to hate me for sending these offers. So this is going to be the initial offer I send out to this guy. Let's take a look at another trade negotiation I can do in this league. All right, let's try and go all the way up top here. In that example, I was going after Drake London, a little bit more of a half measure, not quite as expensive as this next guy, but let's see what it costs me to go and get Malik Neighbors, because Malik Neighbors would be a huge difference maker. You guys know, I have him Dynasty wide receiver too, so I'm very, very high on Malik Neighbors to begin with. Let's see if we can get something done for Malik Neighbors. Now, this guy, quick evaluation of his team, looks like he's not really trying to compete that hard. Again, he does have some competitive assets, Montgomery, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, so on and so forth. But the remainder of his team is young. He does have most of his capital still. Maybe I can convince this guy to go rebuild and try and recoup some assets and maybe sell off some players. I don't know what he's thinking at this point in time, but I might be thinking that, given that this league doesn't have a whole lot of direction right now. It's a new startup. Some people are competing, some people are rebuilding, but taking a hard stance is usually the place to go here. So let's craft an offer around Malik Neighbors and see if we can get something done. So this is going to be the basis of the offer I send out. Again, I don't know what this guy's thinking. I have no idea if he thinks he can compete or not, but I do think 2 ones and Jordan Addison is, relatively speaking, 3+ firsts of value for Malik Neighbors, which is what he's worth in our trade value chart. So that is what I'm going to send out to him. Again, I would love to get Malik Neighbors. He's an absolute stud. He's my Dynasty wide receiver too, and he would go a long way. If I upgraded my number 1 receiver right now, which is Jordan Addison, into Malik Neighbors using my first round capital in the future, I do have then a clear direction. I'm trying to compete. I have a young wide receiver who's going to give me difference making, needle moving production, and then the rest of my wide receivers can make up in the aggregate using the best ball format. So we'll send this one out. We'll see what happens. And again, if any of these trades, if any of these negotiations result in anything, they'll be on the screen. Let's pivot into team number 4. Now, this team is an interesting discussion. You can see this one's a lot more of a spread out league. And the reason for that is that this league has been around for like 4 years. This is the Tone Setter Truthers League. I actually won this league last year, even though I'm ranked 7th on the analyzer. It's because I don't have much draft capital. This is the reason that I'm ranked this low. For the most part, my team is very competitive. I have Saquon Barkley, who's obviously a very high pick. Jonathan Taylor in redraft, very high pick. 3 quarterbacks that can get me there. Wide receiver-wise, I'm a little bit weaker in terms of overall production. Tight end, I have George Kittle, who obviously is going to be a huge difference maker. So this team is a really interesting conversation, at least in terms of what I think about it, because I won the championship last year. So I'm already kind of free-rolling the remainder of this league for the next couple of seasons. And one thing that I've been able to do successfully in this league is compete all 4 years it's been around, despite having some competitive assets at some points, like a Christian McCaffrey, like a Devontae Adams. I've been able to pivot, get a little bit worse production, but younger, and keep my winning window alive and never have to rebuild in this league. So one thing that I could do is, obviously, I just won the league, go out and get a stud receiver or something and go and try and compete again in 2026 and or 2025, and try and win. I do actually have all my future capital in 2027. It's just not listed there for whatever reason. But 2026, I still have my 1. So I still have some buying power. If I want to go after a stud wide receiver to help my, winning window here, I absolutely could, because again, Saquon, JT, Chuba Hubbard, those guys are going to be really competitive. Same with my quarterbacks, same with my other wide receivers. So I'll propose a couple different trades for this league. a couple trying to get better and trying to get a contending, back-to-back type of championship. But as you can see at the top here, I mean, Danny's team is very strong. Jay Metal's team is starting to come into form with all the picks that he ended up spending this year. I don't know why they're showing up as that he hasn't spent them, but he did obviously spend the 2025 capital there. So his number is a little bit overinflated as a result. But again, let's see if I can go get some competitive assets. Let's see if I can, really further this winning window. Or am I going to try and pivot, try and get off of some of my competitive assets and get my winning window kicked down the can and a little bit into the future? So I think Doc's team is a perfect one to start with because obviously he has 2 guys or 3 guys really that would really further my winning window. Derrick Henry, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb. If I can make an offer that's enticing enough for him to go after these guys, I know he's trying to rebuild. He's messaged me trying to rebuild already. So let's try and craft an offer around the Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb stack. And if it works out, maybe we'll toss in Derrick Henry there. If it doesn't work out, I mean, I know he's looking for young players. I know he's looking for draft capital, and I have that to be able to spare. So let's try and work a trade around here. So on my team, the things that he'd probably be interested in is getting younger at quarterback. And I do have 2 young quarterbacks, Drake May and Brock Purdy, but we'll have to kind of wait and see what ends up working out better in the trade calculator. And then I do have some young players at wide receiver, like a Keon Coleman, who I could throw into the deal to sweeten it up. He might be interested in Keon Coleman, but I think primarily it's going to center around draft capital and getting younger at quarterback as far as the offer that I craft for him here. So let's get into it. So this is the Brock Purdy offer that I think would really make sense for him. He's getting 2 first-round picks to help him rebuild. He gets younger at quarterback. It's a little bit of a lateral move production-wise, but obviously Brock Purdy is about 5 years younger than Dak Prescott, so a great move from his perspective. And then when you're selling off a guy like CeeDee Lamb, you do want to bank up some draft capital to be able to hit on. Maybe you'd argue this is not enough. This is probably my initial offer. If he doesn't want to do this, maybe I could add in a 2nd-round pick. I could add in another young player, whatever the case is. But this is going to be the initial offer that I send him. If it gets done, as always, I'll have that on the screen for you. And this is another example of what I could do to help him further his winning window as well. He might just want a straight-up first-round pick in addition to Drake May, and I would probably be okay doing that. But this would be my initial offer, Keon Coleman, a 2nd, and Drake May. You pivot off of the wide receiver who's like 26, 27 years old. You pivot off of the 32-year-old quarterback. You get a young quarterback to start your rebuild to really build around. And from my perspective, I now have Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, Dak Prescott, who I can absolutely cycle weeks with. And actually, I move off of a little bit of risk that Drake May doesn't necessarily become a difference-making fantasy quarterback. But these are the 2 offers I'm going to send him. We'll see what he ends up doing. Let's look at some of the deals that would maybe further my winning window in the future. So like I said, that's one thing I could do. I could go all in, make 2 moves like that, go get the CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott stack. I'm going to be a really competitive team, and I'm going to look to defend my crown. But I would be giving away a lot of draft capital in that scenario. And, come 2027, 2028, I'm probably looking at a team that I need to rebuild. But again, this league's been around 4 years and I haven't rebuilt yet. So I would say I feel confident in my ability to trade, make marginal gains here. The other thing I could do is try and sell my peak value assets and further my winning window in the future. And the biggest example of that is Saquon Barkley, because Saquon Barkley is a very high-end asset in Dynasty, due in part because of the production that he gives you. So if I was looking at some of the competitive teams and how I could pivot around a Saquon Barkley deal to get younger, let's take a look at that, at how that would look. An easy example is to go to this guy who has Devon Achane and Chase Brown, who are both guys that I absolutely love, but Achane specifically is worth about the same as Saquon Barkley, so I could explore the offer with him. Hey, would you like to do Saquon Barkley for Devon Achane? And I'd be willing to throw in a 2nd-round pick, no problem, to get that done because I do value Devon Achane higher. So that's one option. I could get younger at running back, still be very competitive, but lose a little bit of that production that Saquon's going to give me, and I will absolutely send that offer out. And I'm probably going to throw a 2nd for 3rd swap in there just to make sure that he knows that I do prefer Achane. I'm sure he prefers Achane too, but this is a guy who's been trying to win the league for a long time. Maybe he thinks Saquon Barkley, that's the hammer that I need. Let's ride. But I do think the more interesting discussion is what would it would look like to trade with this guy who has Jahmyr Gibbs. And if I could try and get from Saquon to Jahmyr Gibbs, get a little bit younger, further my winning window, and not necessarily have a guy like Saquon on my roster who could lose a ton of value, I think this guy's a really good example of what it could look like. And also, he has 2 other really interesting pieces to me with Terry McLaurin and Jawan Jennings. Now, I don't know how this would work out necessarily because I don't think this guy is ready to compete yet. But maybe he thinks he's ready to compete. I don't exactly know. Let's go over to the trade calculator and let's see if we can work out a deal surrounding Jahmyr Gibbs and Saquon Barkley, because maybe he wants to go all in. We'll have to wait and see. So the initial, basis of the deal is Saquon for Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, If he's trading for Saquon, I understand and recognize that this is a follower of ours. He probably is going to want to win if he trades for Saquon Barkley. I don't think he's stupid. I think he's going to trade for Saquon thinking that he can win and give him better production than Jahmyr Gibbs. But again, we're just feeling out the waters. Maybe he tells me to pound sand and he just wants to keep Jahmyr Gibbs. Very, very possible. I'm going to need to make it worth his while to be able to do this because I'm getting significantly younger at running back for not that much different of production. I realize and recognize that. I'm sure he realizes and recognizes that. So the only way he's going to accept this deal is if he gets a lot of assets on top of Saquon Barkley to be able to maybe go flip for production or whatever. This is a league where you get first round capital. It's going to be easily flippable into production because everybody wants to rebuild. Everybody values first round picks appropriately. So the basis of this deal is going to be Saquon Barkley and a first for Jahmyr Gibbs. And you guys might be thinking that is way too much to pay, but knowing what this guy is going to be thinking, he's not going to flip Jahmyr Gibbs unless he knows he can absolutely compete. And getting a first-round pick of liquidity means that he can go to a team like the doc says, like I talked about already, or some of the other teams that may be looking to rebuild and use that first-round pick to buy wide receiver help. Because if we pivot over to his team, he doesn't really have a shit ton of wide receivers that are going to make a huge difference in his lineup. And who knows, maybe I could get him to throw in a Jawan Jennings on my side because I have Brandon Ayuk. I can use Jennings until he's back or whatever the case is. But that's probably what the basis of the deal is going to look like because after this guy makes this trade, he is absolutely going to want to go and try and flip that first round pick that I give him into, and he has his own first round pick as well. Maybe he could go send 2 1s for a high end wide receiver. Maybe he could send a 1 and a 2 or 2 1s for a bunch of assets, a bunch of wide receivers, a bunch of running backs that can help him out. Again, I'm thinking from my league mate's perspective, not from mine. Obviously, I want Jahmyr Gibbs. He probably doesn't want to give me Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm thinking from his perspective. Why would he trade Jahmyr Gibbs for Saquon Barkley? The only reason I would do it in his situation is that I think I can turn those other assets into a really competitive roster that is ready to win now. So that's going to be the offer that I send out to him. We are going to pivot into my 5th team, talking about how I can improve that team in the same way that I've talked about these other ones. All right, so this last team is a team that is very, very strong, one of the best teams in the league, and you can see that I've built out, really, I was coming out of a house money window, and of course, if you guys are new to the channel, that just basically means I have a very young team that could win if things break right, but I decided to make some trades to go all in. I sold my 2026 draft class, essentially my 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round pick, all those picks, and I ended up netting Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, Evan Ingram, and then I think I got somebody else, Brian Robinson, in that deal. So I ended up basically giving up a 1, 2, a 3, and a 4 for Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, Brian Robinson, and Evan Ingram because I think this team is ready to compete. So my question here with a team like this is it's a young team, could compete if things break right. Do you want to upgrade, let's say, an Amari Hampton to a more win-now type of running back? Let's say a Marvin Harrison to a more win-now type of wide receiver because while those guys are young, there's also the risk that they don't necessarily work out relative to how they're valued now. And I could sacrifice some of the value and go after a competitive asset because if Hampton hits, he is going to end up being potentially Dynasty RB2, RB3 or something. If Harrison hits, he's going to end up being a top 5 Dynasty wide receiver. But I could forego some of that risk and just trade Hampton for the best running back I can get, trade Harrison for the best wide receiver I can get, and be on my merry way ready to compete. So let's explore some of those deals. Let's see what we can do in regards to upgrading some of my young, unproven guys into win-now guys. And that would also apply to a guy like RJ Harvey as well. All right, so this is a good team that I could potentially trade with because this guy has Bijan. I would say this is a team that should be looking to rebuild. I don't know what he's thinking necessarily, but if he's looking to rebuild, I think giving him Amari and Hampton for Bijan being the basis of the offer makes a lot of sense because he can be like, okay, I get off of Bijan Robinson, who's, yes, a young running back, but is still more competitive, and I can move into an asset, collection mindset, and I can sell off Mike Evans, I can sell off Stephon Diggs and whatnot, and who knows, maybe I can even inquire about those guys as well. So let's start a trade offer, trade negotiation with the basis of the deal being Amari and Hampton for Bijan Robinson. And if we look back at my team really quick, it's going to be hard for me to probably get to Bijan using Amari and Hampton straight up. And I don't have, I do have some young wide receivers that I could send him. So let's maybe work the deal around Amari and Hampton and Marvin Harrison, Jordan Addison, one of my young wide receivers, in exchange for Bijan plus maybe an aging wide receiver of his. Because again, he's probably only doing this deal if he's thinking, I'm going to tear it down, I'm going to rebuild. So let's try and make the offer based on that. The other thing I could do as well is go Amari and Hampton and RJ Harvey for Bijan Robinson, or Amari and Hampton and a first for Bijan Robinson, or Amari and Hampton a second and buy Shell Tootin for Bijan Robinson. Try and give him multiple bites at the apple and give him a bunch of assets that are all young that are going to accumulate value. So let's work over to the trade calculator here. We see Bijan for Hampton as the basis of the deal. Other guys that are on his roster that I would maybe want, you can see Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, some of those kind of win now competitive assets, Derrick Henry as well. I think Derrick Henry probably makes sense for me, given that I'm a competitive team. And Derrick Henry, if he's selling Bijan, he would probably want off of his roster as well. So let's work it around Mike Evans and Derrick Henry, two guys that are really competitive assets that I could maybe work around here. So he's going to give me Mike Evans and Derrick Henry as well. I'm going to need to make it worth his while and give him something really, really solid in return. So let's see what it looks like with Addison and Harvey. Let's see what it looks like with those assets in the deal, how fair this ends up being. So it says I slightly win. Again, he would be motivated to make a trade like this because he's getting a young rookie running back. He's getting a young wide receiver in his third year, and he's getting Amari Hampton, who's a rookie running back, in exchange for Derrick Henry, who's obviously old, Mike Evans, who's obviously old, and then Bijan Robinson, who is young, but he is an absolute hammer, and he's selling for high-end value. So when you're selling a guy like Bijan, ideally you want an elite running back in return, and you're getting that, and you're getting a lot younger at running back and wide receiver. So this will be a trade that I'll probably send out to him because this really gives me a clear sense of direction. Because right now, after making that Brandon Ayuk, Tyreek Hill, Brian Robinson, and Evan Ingram move, I've kind of put my chips in already. So I might as well not take any half measures and really, really go in for this thing. Derrick Henry, Bijan, Mike Evans are going to really, really help me get there. And I'm still holding my 2027 capital. I don't really necessarily need to move that yet. I could also work out a deal where instead of giving up two assets like Harvey and Jordan Addison, I might just give up one asset, and let's see how lopsided this trade is with Marvin Harrison. It says it's fair. I would probably want something in return, like maybe he gives me his 2026 2 or something, which projects to be early if he's making a deal like this. Maybe this would be a trade that I could send him as well, where he gets two building block assets, Marvin Harrison, Amari Hampton, who could still accumulate value. I get two really competitive pieces, a very good running back who's going to be with me for a long time, and a second round pick of insulation that I could use to buy further assets, or I could just use to spend, or whatever the case is. So that's kind of the deal that I'm working out with him. I think that would make a lot of sense. We're going to go through one more trade, and then this will be the end of the video here. Again, I'm going to center this around maybe trying to go after a guy that puts me in a little bit more of a pure win now window, because I do have a lot of asset value built up here. So let's look around to some of these other teams. I mean, this is another team that I could go after. You could see the CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown assets. Because of all the value that I've built up, I really, really do want to build the type of team that has, high-end caliber assets. So let's maybe work out a deal here with CeeDee Lamb or Amon-Ra St. Brown, because those guys are going to be great assets. Now let's take a look, actually. So Jared also has Malik Neighbors. I would imagine, given that he's building out a very, rebuild type of team, I don't know if he necessarily would want to move off of Malik Neighbors, because Malik Neighbors is a very young wide receiver. But I also could I'll send him this offer too. I'm not going to show it in the calculator because it's pretty straightforward. I'll send him my 2027 1 and Marvin Harrison for Malik Neighbors and see if he wants to do that. Maybe he throws me a Jaden Reed back or something just to balance that out. But I'm not going to show that. That's pretty straightforward. What else do we have here? Do we have anything else? This guy could be looking off of Justin Jefferson, but he has a competitive team. He's probably thinking about that. Danny is behind me with Emeka Egbuka, Puka Nacua, those type of assets. I mean, I could go after Puka Nacua for sure. Puka Nacua would really fit my build, and Danny is all about collecting picks these days. That would be an interesting one. What would I even offer him? I could offer him, he's probably not looking for anything that's not a high-end asset. So again, I'd probably have to give him Marvin Harrison in a first for Puka Nacua, and maybe he throws me something back, but he doesn't really have a whole lot going there. Let's work with this guy instead. This is a team, DTB Browning, if you're watching this. I know you watch the channel. CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously are his best assets. And his team name is All In Now, and he doesn't have his first-round capital in 2026. Now, if he makes a move like this, he's kind of signaling to the league that he is not All In Now anymore. I don't think he can win with this team. And personally, I think he should rebuild and tear this thing down. I'm going to see if I can start that process for him. And CeeDee Lamb is going to be the guy that I go after, because I don't have any shares of CeeDee Lamb in Dynasty right now, which is surprising, but I don't. And I'm going to offer him Marvin Harrison and a first for CeeDee Lamb, because I think Marvin Harrison and a first is a very good package for a team in his situation. He absolutely needs to make a decision whether it's shit or get off the pot. And to me, he does not have enough to win the championship against teams like mine and other really competitive teams in this league. So I'm going to send him this offer. It says that I'm winning, but this would really, really fit his team description, which is get younger at wide receiver, get a first round pick, build for 2027. He doesn't have his 2026 first, so after making this trade, he would probably want to try and go find the guy who has his 2026 first. But again, we were just looking over some of my teams here, showing you guys really how I construct trade offers and how I want to go after some of the assets I want to look after for. So let's get into the final team of the video. And this one is probably something that a lot of people don't really think about, is how to deal with a monster in your league. Like Scott, shout out to Scott, has an absolute beast of a team, right? I'm a competitive team. You see I'm number 3 in the analyzer. Anything can happen. It's fantasy football, but he's got a friggin' hammer of a team. So I'm only going to get there with hammers. And as you can see by my team construction here, I have a good team. I definitely could compete, but I am slightly weaker at wide receiver than I would like to be. I mean, competitively, I have Adams and Evans who are going to give me great production. London's going to give me great production. Ayuk, once he's back, we'll see. Worthy, a little bit young. Worthy and Trevion Henderson don't really fit my build here. That's kind of my thought on this team. And I also just am a lower than consensus on Joe Mixon. So I might use some of those pieces to try and get a hammer, because that is kind of what my team is missing right now, because I have a hammer at running back with Bijan. I mean, London obviously really good, Kittle really good, but I could use another hammer wide receiver to go along with Drake London. So what I'm going to do is look around this league, see what I can do. Worthy and Henderson are great pieces for me to use to be able to do this, because they are going to have a lot of value in the open market. I mean, Bucky Irving is on this guy's team. His team isn't very good. I could definitely see if I can pivot from Henderson to Bucky straight, because I do think that would be a great move to make. Again, I'm not going to show that in the trade calculator because that's pretty straightforward. It would just be Henderson for Bucky straight up. But I'll send that one out, keep you updated on that one. This guy has some real hammers here. So shout out to, I think this is Serge. Serge has Nico Collins and JSN. This is a half PPR league, the only half PPR of this video that I'm doing. And I don't think this is tight end premium either. I think it's just super flex, half PPR, kind of bog standard. It's also a little bit of a shallower lineup. I think it's like a start 9. Nico Collins is a guy that I would really be interested in going after. And I think given that, you know, he's trying to collect some picks. I mean, he put fuck them picks basically as his name, but I think he should be kind of thinking that I can't compete with this team. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pivot over to the trade calculator, and we're going to see exactly what it's going to cost me to go get Nico, because Nico would be a huge difference maker for my roster. And we'll start the trade negotiations with Xavier Worthy, I guess. I mean, maybe he's thinking he's got a good wide receiver core he would want. Let's start it with Trevion Henderson, because he's got a good wide receiver core. He might want Henderson instead. So in terms of how far off these two assets are, they're not like super far off, because, you know, I got them like 20 spots apart in my startup rankings. I still have my 2026 one. I still have some young wide receivers that I could throw into this deal. I mean, I'm looking at my team right now. I don't think there's anything other than my first that he would really be interested in. If he's thinking I'm going to rebuild, I'm going to tear things down, I mean, is he going to be interested in some of these other guys? Probably not. I mean, he's weak at running back. Maybe I could get away with throwing him Joe Mixon and another competitive wide receiver. I'll send him 2 offers just to see which one he prefers. Let's see what he thinks of Joe Mixon, Trevion Henderson. How much further off are we? I mean, it's actually not that far off. So we'll send him Joe Mixon, Trevion Henderson. If he thinks he's a competitive team, he might be interested in this offer. Now, I disagree with that assessment, but if he thinks he's a competitive team, he might be like, hey, Joe Mixon, Trevion Henderson, I just lose Nico. I'm going to be real competitive with this team. Again, I don't think that's the right decision, but maybe he does. Assuming he's thinking rationally, which is how I would be thinking about this team here, maybe he just wants young assets. So I would be offering him here, let's say Trevion Henderson, my mid to late projected first. Am I losing this deal? It says I still slightly win the deal. To be honest, I would almost kind of want a sweetener on top of what he's giving me here. Let me just see what else I can do. Can I go, Waddle wouldn't be really a big needle mover for me, because like the thing is for me too is that I'm trying to get needle movers in my starting lineup ideally, and nobody here really stands out to me as a needle mover. What I could do is give him Trevion Henderson a first and Xavier Worthy, and I could get both Nico and JSN in return, so that I'm getting 2 needle moving wide receivers, giving up, you know, 2 good running back and wide receiver options that are young, and giving him a first round pick of liquidity. Let's see what that looks like. Let's give him Trevion Henderson, Xavier Worthy, and we'll get both JSN and Nico Collins in return, and we'll see how this kind of shakes out. So it's saying I win this one. So I'm going to try sending out this offer, because I really do think that when you look at my starting lineup, that would make a pretty big difference. If I upgrade Xavier Worthy and Trevion Henderson to Nico Collins and Jackson Smith and Jigba, that would make a pretty big difference because I'd still be starting Bijan, James Cook, Joe Mixon, Isaiah Pacheco at running back. Behind Bijan, I just got to figure out one of these three guys every week. And then in my starting, two wide receiver spots would be Drake London, Nico Collins. And then I'd be flexing, JSN, Adams, Evans, whoever on any given week as well. So I feel pretty confident in that return if I'm able to get it. I do think I probably like the initial just try and get Nico for Trevion and a Mixon kind of type of guy better, but it'll have to depend on his team assessment. If he doesn't think he's competitive, which he shouldn't, he probably won't be interested in that deal. So let's take a look at another one of my league mates. Let's see if we got any other guys that have some top end assets. I mean, Bailey's got some top end assets, but they're young. He's got a young team. He's probably not looking to move off of those guys. I mean, Tyreek would go a long way to making my team a competitive team, but he also has Tua, so he's probably anchored to that offense. This team is interesting. This is a really young team. He's got Christian McCaffrey as well, so I could even go after CMC on this roster. Let's see what we can do with Bishop Sankey here. I mean, this guy's also got some decent pieces, but I think he's more competitive. So let's go and work a deal around some of these guys. So this guy's got a young team. Amon-Ra St. Brown is not old by any means. By any means is he old, but he's older than the rest of his team, as is Christian McCaffrey. So can I get Amon-Ra St. Brown and Christian McCaffrey away from this guy to further my winning window? Because again, I'm competing with a monster. I need as many projectable points in my starting lineup as humanly possible. It's a half PPR league. Only the Hammers are going to win me this one. So if we look at my team, he's trying to go young in this scenario. He's selling off McCaffrey. He's selling off Amon-Ra St. Brown. So let's start with the basis of this deal probably being that I'm giving him Xavier Worthy and Henderson, I would imagine. And let's see where we're at with that. If we pivot over to the trade calculator, do we have a fair deal here? And it says that I'm winning this deal because obviously St. Brown, a huge needle mover. This would probably be my initial offer because I don't really love buying Christian McCaffrey, if I'm being honest. I do think he's a very risky asset, and I think generally Christian McCaffrey managers feel the same way about him. So this would probably be my initial offer. I'd probably be willing to go as high. I don't actually have my 2 in 2026, but I could send him my 2 in 2027 and see how that kind of balances out the deal a little bit. And maybe this makes it a little bit more fair. And it makes it a little bit more fair. So I would say this would probably be my highest I'd be willing to go. But I'm going to start the initial offer with just these two guys and see how far apart we are. Because maybe he's thinking he can compete. Maybe he's thinking, oh, I want to keep St. Brown or whatever the case is. But I don't think he could necessarily compete with this team. And I would be proactive if I were him. Because like if you look at his quarterbacks, it's just not good enough to win. His running back 1 is a rookie. His running back 2 could get injured at any time. His top 2 wide receivers are obviously great. But behind that, he's a little bit shallow. And he's already started the process of kind of collecting some picks. So I think he might be interested in something like this. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that was going through my top 6 contending. Well, not my top 6, but 6 contending rosters of mine that I feel like need a little bit of work. So I'm going to be sending out some trade offers. And yeah, we'll see how this materializes. So I thought this was a really fun exercise going over me just sitting down. Like I do this, first of all. If you want me to record this every time, I will. Because I sit down once every couple of weeks, look at my rosters, look at my contending teams, look at my rebuilding teams, try and make offers to further my dynasty teams. And again, this was not meant to show off our My Teams feature in our trade calculator, but it is the single best free tool that you guys can use. All you have to do to use the My Teams feature and see how good your wide receiver core is based on our expert rankings relative to your league mates. See, when I look back here and go back to this league, how good does your team stack up? And especially if you're in multiple leagues like me, you're in a bunch of different leagues, you can go, okay, this league, I forget how good my team is here. Oh, I'm actually second on the My Teams analyzer. I have a top quarterback core, a top running back core, need some work at wide receiver, but the tight end position is good. This is the best feature out there on the fantasy football market. And again, you can access it for free by signing up over on flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE to start your 7-day free trial. Look at all the features on the site. Use the trade calculator. Use the My Teams feature. You can use my specific rankings in the My Teams feature, Danny's specific rankings in the My Teams feature, and in the trade calculator, and in the like our overall dynasty rankings, rookie rankings, draft guides, all that good stuff. Head on over to Flock Fantasy to get started. Let me know down below, what did you guys think of this video? Do you like seeing me talk through my trade discussions, talk through how I craft offers? And again, that Dynasty Trade Secrets video that me and Danny did recording in person, I implemented a lot of those strategies. Like if I go back to that show sheet, I'll just quickly tell you guys some of the strategy points that we talked about in that video, because I really do think it's one thing for us to sit here and tell you, this is how you get more trades done in Dynasty. It's another thing for me to show you exactly why we get more trades done in Dynasty. Tip number 1 in that video was, why are you making the trade? What was the first thing I did in this video? I was, okay, this is what my team looks like. This is my goal. These are my weaknesses. These are my strengths. Tip number 2 was understand the perspective of your league mate. With every one of those trades, I talked about, okay, why would my league mate do this? How does my league mate accept this offer? I'm not sending him, as a competitive team, 3 receivers that are 21 years old. I'm not sending him, as a rebuilding team, a bunch of 29-year-old running backs. No. Understanding the perspective of your league mate. Tip number 3 was you have to give a little to get a little. Even though all of those trades, for the most part, said that I was winning them, I'm obviously not going to send trades that I'm losing. Like, I'm going to start with trades that I'm winning and work my way backward from there. But the ultimate philosophy was you have to give a little to get a little, right? I'm offering trades where I'm giving up good assets. I'm giving up Marvin Harrison. I'm giving up Amari and Hampton in that last team that I gave as an example. Maintaining a good trade relationship with your league mates. Again, if my trades don't work out, the ones that I sent offers, I'm not going to call my league mates idiots for not doing it. I'm going to say, hey, no worries. Maybe we'll get something down the road. It's okay to lose some of these trades if your team is better off making it. I don't actually have any teams where I was losing those trades, but if I had a monster and I was just going all in for a Bijan Robinson type of asset, I can lose it in the trade calculator and it could still be a good trade for me. If I had an orphan that I was breaking down there, I can lose a trade and I'm better off making it because I'm getting future picks. And I also gave myself a lot of multiple outs to win those trades. For example, that last trade that I was talking about, I was getting CeeDee Lamb, St. Brown, Adams, and Kamara. If a lot of those guys have really good seasons this year, that's going to further my winning window and give me multiple outs to win that trade. So again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Let me know what you think of my new camera here, because I have a very, very new camera that I think looks absolutely spectacular. Let me know what you guys think of it down below. And of course, make sure to check out vlogfantasy.com, promo code FSE for 7-day free trial to get started. Use these tools, send more trade offers, get more offers done. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.